Thank you to everyone who had submitted your manga, manhwa, and even webcomic recommendations on my Kagurabachi video. This video is for you as I've gathered all 31 of your suggestions as of May 13th, and from that video, I'll be reading each of their first volumes or 10 chapters if they do not have a volume equivalent. People have recommended these manga, manhwa, and even webcomics for one reason or another, and I want to respect people's kindness by finding what I enjoyed most about their suggestions. Kill 6 billion demons by abandon. For unknown reasons, a girl is forced to kill 6 billion demons to save her boyfriend. The designs of the world and characters are so dense with detail. So often was I zooming into pages just to see everything the artist drew. The world itself is populated by many uniquely designed beings, and that even including random background characters with so much detail, it was clear to me how much the artist thought and cared about this world they were creating. Every chapter featured a full page showing off how expansive this world is. These were some of my favorite moments because they were always used to add so much more impact to the story. Centuria by Toru Kuramori. I don't know what Kuramori-san is cooking with this manga, but volume 1 had me hooked. The focus on the main character Julian learning kindness through people and how he may return that kindness, it's such a wonderful read during a time when people on the internet are so overly negative. Of course, this is Shonen Jump, so I cannot forget to mention that a Kraken God grants Julian the power of 100 people. But that is the most I will spoil from this manga. I have really enjoyed what I read so far. The characters look great. The faces are very expressive, which adds a lot to the emotional scenes. I love the side characters, Mira being such a pivotal character to helping Julius grow into being a main character, Angval for being just a hot muscle mommy, but also another person who helps Julius grow. The mangaka plays a lot with the darkness. There are some really awesome panels that utilize this so well. One of my favorite non-spoilery panels is Julius carrying a rock on his back. It visually captures the immense weight of the rock. The bright sky fades into darkness, the grays and blacks on his pants to emphasize the wrinkles and the stress his body is undergoing is so good. Mad by Yusuke Otori. I felt uneasy reading Mad. It is about Earth being taken over by alien-looking aliens. What Mad does such a great job at is capturing the uneasiness in the quieter moments. Although I know what these aliens look like, I don't know what they do. Characters will give the main character, John, weird, quiet stares that get my mind thinking about what if the aliens can disguise themselves, or is it really safe here? These are the feelings the main character has as well, so it allows me to feel a closer connection to John as a character, which just further enhances my reading experience. Sometimes it's hard to determine if what I'm reading has happened or not. The end of volume 1 left on such a crazy reveal that my body physically ached because I had to stop reading. Usogi by Toshio Tako. This is Baku. Baku loves to lie. Baku gets the thrill of gambling his life away. Baku has maxed out charisma stats and is able to lie himself out of any situation. This is Baku the Lie Eater. This manga has been so funny because it always is interesting to see how Baku is able to talk himself out of insane situations. One chapter, we're seeing him trick a dealer at an illegally gambling hall to rig a roulette wheel so his friend can bet on the rigged number. Another chapter, he lies his way out of paying for late fees on a video rental called Operation Titty Drop, which might have been my favorite chapter so far because it really presented this manga as being more than just casino game gambling. He just tries to win at everything in life. The volume ends in the middle of a group of killers hunting Baku in a death game, and he already is lying his way out of this situation to get the upper hand in the death game. It's next level. This is the kind of goofy humor I really love in a manga, and the art looks great, especially when it comes to expressing the insanity of Baku and many of the other characters. Land of the Illustrious by Haruko Ichikawa. Starting your manga off with fighting against a god is certainly a way to pull me in. The conflict between these group of crystals known as the Illustrious protecting themselves against godlike beings is a great premise to really lay the foundation of what worth means to many of these characters. I particularly engage with Cinnabar's story because she is a tragic, lonely character, someone who has been isolated from the crystals, whose very existence threatens the crystals around her. One panel described the night being her cage to keep her from the other crystals, as she is being assigned as the only night guard. Her relationship with Phos is a wonderful one, as Phos is someone who is trying to find a value in themselves. Same with a character like Diamond. This manga just does such a great job at creating compelling characters that you want to learn more about. And the art style is just beautiful. A lot of striking imagery, especially when the crystals are fighting against the Lunarians. This is a manga that I want to watch the first episode of the anime because I think the colors would really add so much to the different kinds of crystals. And the first episode was great. It captured a lot of what I enjoyed about the manga. It was also animated by Studio Orange before they did Beastars and Trigun Stampede. And it still looks really good. The way they were able to render the crystal hairs for all of these characters looked incredible. The 100 Girls Who Really Love You by Rikito Nakamura and Yukiko Nozawa. I started watching harem anime around the end of my time in high school. Some of my early favorites were Ranma, Clannad, Love Hina, My Bride's a Mermaid. However, as I grew older, I was less interested in harems and the typical high school romance story. But what I love about 100 Girlfriends is that the author is fully aware of the thousands of harems that came before it. Due to a god being distracted by Castle in the Sky rerun, the main character, Rentaro, has been blessed by having 100 soulmates. However, if the soulmates are rejected by Rentaro, they will die. It's such a goofy premise that presents some pretty incredible moments that make this such a compelling harem manga. For example, Rentaro designs an elaborate plan to have a first kiss between his two girlfriends so that none of them know who was his first kiss. It involves standing in specific spots, blindfolds, dice rolls, text messaging, and loudly playing My First Kiss, which is the ending from Doraemon. This manga truly had me cackling at how goofy it is. But did I mention I also nearly cried reading it? Because this manga has so much heart. Rentaro is such a caring character who goes through so much to make sure that each of the girls feel loved and respected. And when they introduced Yoshimoto, my heart melted. She is Rentaro's third girlfriend, and her shyness is so extreme that she is only able to speak by pointing out sentences from her favorite romance novel. I deeply empathize with her. As a lifelong shy person who is only able to do YouTube because I don't physically see my viewers, and as someone who has faced loneliness many times throughout my adult life, I immediately was rooting for Yoshimoto. But what had me tearing up was the lengths in which Rentaro went to make sure that Yoshimoto felt comfortable. He turned her favorite novel into a clickable audiobook with text-to-speech so that they can talk face-to-face, and she doesn't have to feel pressure to talk. This is the level of care that Rentaro does for each of his girlfriends. It is so endearing and makes me so excited to learn how he will have 100 girlfriends. Skippin' Loafer by Misaki Takamatsu. What an absolutely adorable manga. Yes, this is a high school romantic comedy, but I love the characters so much in this. Mitsumi is this straight-A top performer student who overthinks and overplans how she wants her life to go. It presents these incredible moments of comedy using Mitsumi's expectations versus her reality. For example, she imagines the speech she had to do in front of the entire school to make friends and have everyone celebrate her. But instead, she told it in a straight face at a robotic tone, and then she just puked all over one of the teachers. However, the manga keeps this lightheartedness, so Mitsumi isn't usually depressed about it. Instead, she learns to think on the fly instead of just trying to plan out everything in her life. In just volume 1, it doesn't feel like much romance is happening. The main male lead, Sosuke, likes spending time with Mitsumi, and Mitsumi likes spending time with Sosuke, but they also enjoy spending time with their new friends. So there isn't a moment where I'm like, oh, they should get together and kiss. It's just like this cute moment of friends just being friends. Worm by John C. McCrae. This is a web novel. Now, I will be honest, wasn't thrilled to read a novel, and I will be clear that I will not accept any novel recommendations because I need them pictures, okay? But I did want to give Worm an honest shot, and I wanted to also just respect the person who suggested this. So I read the first 6 chapters, which was the gestation arc, where we are introduced to Taylor, who has the powers of controlling bugs. It is a bit of a horrifying power because most of this arc is Taylor trying to kill a gang leader using bee stings, venomous spiders, and fire ants. She is also being bullied at school, so there's this additional layer of tension because Taylor is constantly suppressing her want to kill her bullies. It certainly establishes a really interesting character who wants to be a superhero, but is also like a high school girl with real issues, who can pretty easily end those issues with her powers. Akumetsu by Yoshiaki Tabata and Yuki Yugo. Akumetsu is a difficult manga to talk about in this relatively optimistic video because this manga deals with a character named Akumetsu who has felt like the world is becoming increasingly more unfair and that the only way to stop all of this corruption and unfairness is through violence. The art is super sick and the manga does a great job at depicting a lot of the frustrations many people reading this manga may have, as they probably have seen this corruption or felt like they wish they could do something about it. Although I greatly disagree with Akumetsu's methods, I think it does highlight an interesting conversation around the feeling of helplessness a lot of people feel when they see blatant corruption. However, I can only speak for an American perspective, but change is possible. There are so many groups out there willing to stick their necks out and protest to fight for a better future. Even small changes at your local level and making your life and the people around you just a bit better could make that feeling of helplessness subside. Rui Dragon by Masaoki Shindo. It's a cute slice of life where we follow Rui through her experience in puberty, but instead of human puberty, she is slowly growing into having these dragon traits passed down by her dragon father. However, we don't know what traits he passed on to her, so each new trait is always a surprise. The art is adorable, and I really love the way the mangaka draws all the characters. I also love how casual the mom is about the entire ordeal to Rui, but behind the scenes, she was panicking. She wasn't expecting her daughter to show these dragon traits, and so she even apologizes to the entire school when Rui accidentally breathes fire. It's certainly a cute manga. The Greatest Estate Developer by BK Moon, Lee Hoon Min, and Kim Hoon So. This is such a fun isekai manga. For some undetermined reason, the main character is swept into a fantasy book where it takes over the body of a hooligan from a noble family. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this. I don't read or watch a lot of isekai manga, and this is my first manhwa because I have already read so much manga. Having to read manhwa as well just makes my backlog even bigger. I found the premise of this manhwa to be very interesting, where it's about a main character exploiting his knowledge, characters, and plots in his fantasy book to quickly turn the events towards his own purpose and goals. It also mixes in the RPG elements to motivate the main character to his relationships with key characters from the book so he can earn points to level up. I enjoyed that they also found a way to incorporate South Korea's conscription law as a benefit to the main character's abilities, which was really cool. I don't even read manhwa, so I am not sure if this is like a common trope, but it was very cool to see. Even though the plot does introduce a goal of getting his fantasy family out of debt, it really just feels like a slice of life isekai where the main character just wants to build and make money. Undead Unluck by Yoshifumi Tozoka. Undead Unluck has such a goofy premise as it involves a main character named Unluck who gives people unluck if they come into contact with her bare skin. Undead is a character who cannot die. It is a very goofy manga because immediately the manga sets up the premise that if they had sex, the world would probably end because the amount of unluck on someone is based on unluck's affection towards the person who touches her. This is a shonen manga, so there is also just this constant action. So there isn't really a moment where these characters get some time to rest because we're already introduced to so many unique villains that are hunting these two characters down. Ichi the Witch by Osamui Nishi and Shiro Usazaki. I love Ichi the Witch. First, all the characters are so pretty. The detail in everyone's eyes are wonderful. Discrades is just absolutely gorgeous, and I probably butchered her name. And I love how vain she is. She knows she is hot, and she is the most popular witch, and she just soaks it all in. It also never gets annoying because she has her perfect counter Ichi next to her. And Ichi is such an incredible main character. His excitement for hunting has led him to hunt creatures known as magiques. These are magical creatures that once defeated through a variety of different conditions, like stealing a crystal ball without getting hit by the magique's lightning strikes, will then grant you the ability to utilize those magic skills. What I love about this manga is Ichi's skills as a hunter. Growing up in the forest among predators and prey alike gave him this ability to conceal himself, sense hostile presences, and study his prey. With all of that hunting skills and now being tasked to hunt more magical creatures with all of these different conditions for victory, it is a brew of wonderful action in storytelling. Also, there is a really cool moment when all of the Master Witches were watching over Ichi and he detected one of them as having a hostile presence, or at least that was how I interpreted that moment, because we got to see some pretty cool drama between the actual witch society. The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity by Saka Mikami. This one tugged at my heartstrings. What an adorable romance manga. I love how this manga introduced each of the characters. Rintaro, who is this very tall, scary looking dude, is asked by his mom to work at a shift at her bakery, and he meets some small, adorable girl named Karuruko, who has just finished her 7th plate of baked goods. It is a romance trope I've seen before, but I was still pretty endeared by these characters. The way the mangaka draws Karuruko every time is absolutely incredible. It gives me this impression of seeing Karuruko through Rintaro's eyes of every time he sees her. His world just stops for a second. The way she felt, the emotion she shows on her face is recorded into his mind. Sometimes he begins to overthink and overinterpret how Karuruko is feeling, but I love how much they enjoy seeing each other. This manga had me thinking about my own relationship. When I used to read manga like this when I was single, I would have my enjoyment on one hand, but a desire to have that kind of relationship on the other. It was an empty, melancholy feeling of reading a relationship I wish I had. However, reading a romance manga like this for the first time since my 8-year relationship, my experience with this manga shifted because instead of having a feeling of emptiness, it was replaced by joy, seeing these characters connect and relate. I was enjoying this manga more than I ever would have thought. Ordeal by Brent Bristol. The art is incredibly detailed. The way the artist is able to draw these detailed muscles is incredible. The way characters are posed are so well realized. It is clear this author puts a lot of care into the study the way MMA fighters fight. Mixing those fight with characters known as Kimos, who have special talents and powers that enhance their fighting, is a recipe for some good ass action. I only read 10 chapters, but even in those 10 chapters, I was introduced to so many different characters fighting using their unique abilities. It was a great introduction to Che, who is just this badass character that was built as this extremely powerful human character with no abilities. Marriage Toxin by Jo Myaku and Mizuki Yoda. What I originally thought was going to be a manga similar to Spy Family, and I was proven way Wrong. Sure, we have a male lead who is a highly skilled assassin, but that's as close as a similarity as we'll get because Garo needs to produce an heir to pass on his family lineage of producing and essentially being powered by poisons. However, he doesn't know how to date, so this entire premise is him working alongside a marriage swindler named May, who is basically teaching Garo how to date and woo women. It is very goofy, and I had a smile on my face for most of the time reading this, and the action is impeccable. It's so good. Kaji by Nobuyuki Fukumoto. A bunch of people in debt are forced to gamble for their lives playing a variety of different games in an isolated location. Is this just Squid Games? Yes, actually it is, because the director and writer mentioned Kaji as an influence for Squid Game, which I didn't know until writing this. The premise of this manga is Kaji is in debt and is forced onto a gambling ship where he plays against other people in debt to hopefully get out of debt. But unlike Squid Games, the gambling ship itself is meant to get people more into debt with this false hope that you can succeed, but no one ever does. What I love about this manga is the ways the initial game is set up. The guests will be playing rock, paper, scissors. However, the guests have a limited number of times they can play each move, and they start with 3 stars, which are basically their lives. And they have a starting balance of money the players choose that accrue 40% interest every 10 minutes before the game begins. This presents the story in a unique way where the manga isn't about playing rock, paper, scissors, but how to outsmart the mechanics and the options available to achieve the victory condition for this round, which is to have 0 cards and 3 stars. The Bugle Call Song of War by Mozuku Sora and Higoro Tomori. A fascinating manga about utilizing the power of military calls using a little trumpet to provide guidance to your troops. It's like the main character is playing a real-time strategy game with musical instruments. It's a very cool premise, and it sets up a very cool world about these ancient civilizations that have erected 9 pillars all across the world. And our goal is to defeat one of the most powerful civilizations called Garland. Strangely enough, there are no good or bad guys. The main character, although forced, is a part of a group of soldiers that commit heinous acts. And when we're teaming up with the flute head, who has also been very vague, we're killing to defend one of the pillars. So I'm curious how much of this idea of who is good and who is bad is being played with in future volumes. Also, the background art is incredible too. The care that goes into creating each of these interiors is incredible. Catenaccio by Daisuke Morimoto. There is no I in team, but there certainly is an I in Catenaccio. This is such a wild story because the focus was on someone who is so determined to go professional that he studies watching soccer matches and even learns Spanish and Italian to prepare himself to go professional. But he failed. He is an awful player. No matter how hard he practiced, he never got better. So when the twist of this story is because he can foul like other professional players, it made me chuckle. But certainly piqued my interest because this character, although he plays poorly, is able to analyze players very well to exploit weak points, if he was good enough. It's really cool to see a sports story that is less about I want to go professional and more a story about what it is like to train with professionals. The beginning of the story ends with the high school journey, and the focus is on the Italian football club, which is just very, very cool. Chojin X by Sui Ishida. From the creator of Tokyo Ghoul comes another body horror manga, as people known as Chojin have abilities that alter their very bodies. This is a strange manga because for the entirety of the first volume, the main character is incapable of doing anything. But it does present an interesting but risky opportunity to have this character utilize that fear to fight. The world setup is also interesting in a way, with Chojin being these threats against humanity, with the recent discovery that you can also grant people Chojin powers via some sort of drug. There is some incredible panels When the Chojin use their powers, and the scale of human Chojin hybrids and full Chojin forms are just so cool to see. Make the Exorcist Fall in Love by Arima and Masuku Fukuyama. I am blown away by the art in this manga. The thick outlines for the characters and the way the artist illustrates these godly and demonic powers are just eye-watering. I want to keep reading to see how all the other demon powers look. The story is about a priest so devoted to God that he plucked out his own eye because he lusted after a succubus, and he is now tasked by the church to kill Satan. Although the story starts pretty gruesome with abuse and overwhelming guilt that leads the main character to wish for death so he can go to heaven quicker, the story utilizes that in such a good way to develop a reason for a character to find love, because at least then they will want to continue living. It is a very great manga with a twist that shook me to the core, and I'm very excited to see how all of this unfolds. Vinland Saga by Makoto Yukimura. Reading all of these manga, manhwa, and webtoons. Oftentimes I'm reading these in bulk, taking little breaks in between, but when reading my 6th manga today, Vinland Saga, I was transported to another place. I was sucked into its story. The way the mangaka establishes who the Vikings are sets up this promised land where there are green pastures, ripe fruits, and no wars known as Vinland. It's such a fascinating setup. Each character introduced has their own weight and a story to be told. Thorfinn wishing to have an honorable duel against Askeladd, who murdered his father unfairly. Askeladd, who seeks to enrich himself and his fellow Vikings. Thors, a warrior who is full of so much kindness and care for every person. I know this manga is often celebrated for its incredible storytelling and its reflection on war and revenge. So I'm excited to see what else this manga is cooking. The Case Study of Vanitas by Jun Mochizuki. I am so happy I enjoyed volume 1. This is the manga that was randomly selected to be read in its entirety in my Kagurabachi video. Luckily, my review for this video is already available. You can check out the link in the description. But for this video, let's focus on volume 1 because I have greatly enjoyed the way the manga opens up. From chapter 1, we are told by the narrator, who is one of the main characters, Noe, that this story is about how he killed the Vanitas, the other main character. But through my time reading this wonderful manga, these two characters are so friendly. There's a lot of great characters, honestly, and the mystery behind Vanitas and the book he wields, which is known as the Book of Vanitas, is incredible. The book, although it can be used to free vampires from being cursed and going feral, it is more commonly known to other vampires as a threat because it is a book created by a vampire that brings great misfortune. It's the kind of mystery and weird storytelling of like who's telling the truth that gets me so excited to read more. And in fact, I did read more, so make sure check out the full review in the link in the description. Shimeji Simulation by Sukumizu. It has been a while since I read a manga like this. There isn't quite a story, but instead a journey with a character. The story follows Shimeji's experience in life as a high school student, but through the lens of someone who is apathetic and lives an abnormal life. In just the first volume alone, it is difficult to piece together what is occurring. Some moments feel like jokes, other times it is just Shimeji trying to return to her shut-in lifestyle. Every character has some bizarre quirk, with my favorite being the teacher in charge of the hole digging club, which she doesn't know why she is digging holes, but she has done so for a year, and she has also like cut a hole in the school's fence so that she can drink alcohol outside the school grounds. It is a truly bizarre manga that right at the end of volume 1 came a huge wave of character development for Shimeji that was greatly appreciated. Akane Banshi by Yuki Tsunenaga and Takamasa Moe. I am blown away by how much this manga speaks to me so deeply. I love a story that follows someone's passion. For Akane, it is her passion for the art of rakugo. a one-man acting show where through facial expressions, voice, hand movement must deliver a compelling retelling of a classic story. It is an art form I was unfamiliar with, but after just the first chapter was something I wanted to learn more about, and would have been something child me would have dreamed of doing because I love performing. The way this story lays the foundation for Akane's journey is wonderful because it helps us understand who's inspired her to perform Rakugo, why this is a revenge story, and what Rakugo really is. And the way Rakugo is drawn in the manga is so incredible. The artist uses large brushstrokes to illustrate the story being told in the performance, while so cleverly drawing the performers acting out these roles. Is just amazing. A beautiful blend of art styles and a depiction of an art form I've never seen before. Witch Hat Atelier by Kamume Shirahama. I have already seen the anime, so I was excited to dive into how the manga presents some of the moments from the anime. I cannot tell you how beautiful of a manga this is. Truly, some of these pages are just beautiful works of art that I just need to frame on a wall. And it also just tells such a captivating story about someone learning how to cast magic because it makes them happy. And the way the magic is casted is so awesome. It is through drawing. From perfect circles to confident straight lines, your artistic skills are one aspect of the strength of the spells you cast. And the way the witches in the story require this knowledge to be hidden from the public because of how dangerously simple it is to cast spells just makes this so much more wonderful. Then, to wrap it by having this ominous threat of the Brim Caps looking to cause chaos in the world, and our mysterious pretty boy, Keyfree, having some unknown obsession with the Brim Hats, makes this story so juicy that I cannot stop reading. Chainsaw Man by Tatsuki Fujimoto. I have already seen a lot of Chainsaw Man and have read some of the manga, so there isn't much new I can add here besides saying that I have really enjoyed a lot of what I've read of Chainsaw Man. The action is absolutely incredible. Characters like Denji are fascinating to watch because we're seeing a flawed character who is so desperate to be loved that he is willing to be used for just a chance at feeling something. Shangri-La Frontier by Ryosuke Fuji and Katarina. This is another manga I have watched the anime for. I absolutely love this anime, having the story about a guy who exclusively loves playing and exploiting shitty games to then have him play a well-made popular game like Shangri-La Frontier is perfect. He is such a troll that he is running through the world naked, soloing boss enemies. It is just a tremendous joy reading this manga. I love how much the game mechanics matter to this series and actually make sense. The drop rates, skill mechanics, the way certain bosses trigger is so freaking cool. The game sets up the premise of 7 unique boss spawns that no one has defeated before. Not because they are abnormally strong, which they are, but because the conditions in which they spawn are unknown and extremely unique. He also, like myself, loves raising the luck stat, which in this game presents him with such a unique scenario that no one in the game has ever seen before. This made me so giddy because this game captures what I really love to see more in MMOs and RPGs so perfectly. Unique encounters and events that happen to less than 1% of the player base. That stuff is just so fascinating. And then for the manga to tease something called the world story progression, which is just such a freaking mystery, but every time you see that percentage meter move up, you get so freaking excited. After God by Sumi Eno. What if gods descended onto Earth and took over half of Japan? But what makes this so special is how fascinated people are that the gods have descended to the earth. Death cults begin to form around the allure that gods are present. People are constantly debating whether there truly are gods or not, because these gods cannot be captured by cameras. There is even this grotesque scene where someone is live streaming themselves being killed by a god. This world after God is truly horrifying. When it comes to the motivation of this story, it is through the lens of the Anti-God Institute, which is not exactly a morally good faction, as they have repeatedly explained that human rights do not matter. However, they seemingly are the only faction large enough to kill a god, as they have been performing experimentations to gain the power of the gods. This is a very fascinating manga that has some incredible manga panels. Verses by one in Kyotaro Azuma. From the creator of Mob Psycho and One Punch Man comes Versus. 47 heroes versus 47 demons. Who will come out on top? If you've watched any of One's previous stories, you know he will go absolutely hard on the action and story. Now, I will give you 10 seconds to skip to the next chapter on the video. Do it now. I'm going to continue talking to it, and I want to talk about spoilers in volume 1. So here, I'm giving you some time. I'll talk about how good the art is while we wait. I love the design of all the characters, while still keeping to One's classic character expressions. And the way volume 1 ends is incredible. The fake out of having 47 heroes versus 47 demons to seeing all of the heroes fail was so shocking. By this being called Versus, and then the Sorcerans, the world the story starts is summoning people from the Mecha Ordinance to help defeat the demons. But the Mecha Ordinance are in the same issue where humanity is being overrun by AI. This premise had me so excited because it was building to robots fighting demons. But no, one said I have to go more insane. So 13 worlds have merged together, each with humanity on the brink of destruction from a variety of different threats, and it's up to all heroes of the 13 worlds to come together to fight. No, that's not it, because they're not going to fight. Instead, they're going to have the threats of humanity fight each other from each of the 13 worlds. Thank you all who have recommended a manga, manhwa, or webcomic. It was my way of saying thank you for supporting my Kagurabachi video. There were a lot of incredible recommendations, but these were some of my favorites that I will continue reading. Centuria, Mad, Ichi the Witch, Make the Exorcist Fall in Love, Vinland Saga, Akane Banshi, Witch Hat Atelier, After God, Versus, Chainsaw Man, and Shangri-La Frontier. If I decide to make another video about reading viewer recommendations, make sure to comment your recommendation below before the end of 2026 so I have a pool of recommendations I can randomly select for the next video. There is also a pinned comment that is asking you to like that comment if you want me to talk about my dislikes and likes for these future viewer recommendation videos. Also, if you have enjoyed my thoughts on the case study of Vanitas, I did read through the entire manga, which I have a video of that coming out next week, but there is an early access link that is completely free that you can watch early. That's it from me, and next time I see you, I'm gonna be reading Bleach. So buckle in. Also, subscribe if you want to see it, because I might be doing some live reactions as well for it. Okay, bye now. Bye-bye.